So as most of you know, the Google Pixel 6 Pro is a phone that Google has just pushed out, and they actually sent it to me, thank goodness, but my opinion pretty much, I'm going to be honest, I'm surprised they still send me stuff because I bashed the Google Pixel 3 and 3 XL, I bashed the Google Pixel 4 and 4 XL, and they actually sent me the 4 XL, and I bashed it like crazy. But surprisingly, the Pixel 6 Pro, I'm going to be honest, I actually do think these are some of the best Android phones ever made. They are personally my favorite Android phone right now. And I actually did purchase a Google Pixel 6 like with my own money, and I'm a humongous fan of that phone too, and I think that is a great value per dollar. Now this phone is not perfect, there are still some things that I'm not a huge fan of, but I really do think for $899 brand new, you can't really go wrong with the Pixel 6 Pro. And the thing is that from my experience and what I'm thinking about, the future of this phone is going to be better than what it is currently. When you look at a phone like a Google Pixel 5, when you buy it, that's pretty much its peak, right? Within a year or two, people kind of forget about it. It kind of goes under the radar. And then by the time the next phone comes out, people kind of move on and people don't even remember. Like with the Pixel 4, the best moment of its time probably was when it first came out. And now nobody even really wants to buy it anymore. With the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, specifically with the 6 Pro we're talking about right now, this is a very solid phone, and I really do think the future of this device, like next year, it's going to be in a better position than what it is currently. So the display of this thing, we gotta hit on the body first. That beautiful 6.7 1-inch LTPO AMOLED display. It's a great looking panel. It's AMOLED. It's 1440p. You can't really get much better than this. I mean, the Galaxy S21 Ultra has, I think, a better panel than this. The Note 20 Ultra also has a very, very good panel. This one is good. I like the curvature to the display. And it's kind of more of what we've seen. I'm kind of used to these types of panels. Now, it does have a fingerprint sensor in the display. A lot of people have been saying that the fingerprint sensor on this display has kind of been iffy, so keep that in mind. I personally never even use a lock screen on my Android phones. Well, I don't use any like biometric thing to unlock it, so keep that in mind. If you're experiencing that, then do keep that in mind, but I do think that's going to get fixed over time. You have the USB Type-C port on the bottom, and on the back, a glass back on the Pixel 6, which is interesting because we haven't seen a glass back fully on our, Pixel lineup since I think like the Nexus 4. I'm trying to think of another Pixel or Nexus, and I think the Nexus 4 was the last one. With the Pixels and all these other ones, we had kind of like a glass kind of matte texture to it, but there was sometimes like aluminum and then like glass hybrid. This is fully glass, which is cool. We have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, we have IP certification, and the build quality is really good. When I feel this phone and I feel my S21 Ultra, I do think the S21 Ultra is built and feels so much better. But it's still a very good feeling phone for sure. Now we do have that triple camera setup on the back, which we'll go and hit on right now. You have a 50 megapixel wide angle lens, 48 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor. Then you also have an 11.1 megapixel ultra wide sensor. Now this is what I'll tell you about this camera. I kind of think that this camera quality and the camera for the video sake and everything is pretty good. I don't think it's anything mind boggling, but I do think, like I said, the future of this phone is going to get better. You can shoot 4K at 60 on the back, which is interesting because Google kind of claims itself to be like the best of the best, and I'm surprised they still haven't made it up to a 8K sensor on the back like Samsung did last year. I think 8K is overkill, but I really just kind of want to get it in these Pixel devices sooner than later. That way the rest of these Pixel phones will end up getting 8K. If the first one brings it, then pretty much all Pixel phones after will pretty much bring it too. Now the front camera 4K at 30, again, I would have loved to have seen 4K at 60, but I think it's totally okay. The camera quality from what I've seen and from my camera comparisons that I've already done, they're actually pretty decent, and I think that's a pretty good thing about this phone. It's a very good sensor, and at this point, the biggest thing to keep in mind too is that there's two things. One, for a lot of applications out there like Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, some probably minor applications too, they really for some reason don't, utilize the full camera capability of these apps. So unless you're actually using like the full camera UI, the stock Android camera app that comes with your phone, you're probably going to see diminished quality compared to even an iPhone, which is kind of sad. So that's a big thing to keep in mind. The second thing is, from my experience with this specific phone, the camera UI is very glitchy. I have no idea why, probably because it's a brand new phone, but Google hasn't really changed the UI on their cameras since like Android 9 or Android 10. It's been pretty much the same thing. So I'm surprised it's this glitchy on this phone. The rest of this phone feels and runs fairly smooth, but for some reason the camera UI is very glitchy, so I'm sure that'll get fixed throughout time, but that's the one thing I saw right now. So in terms of the camera quality and everything, I think it's great. It could be better, but I guess it's it's definitely more of a pro than a con in my opinion. So in terms of that covers it up there. Now hitting on the software, this is another big asset of owning a Pixel. It's stock Android, there's not a lot of bloatware, but also this phone is pretty much going to be updated and getting updates for several years now. Google just changed their software lifecycle to 5 years of security updates, which means 3 to 4 full OS updates, which is awesome. But another big thing to keep in mind is that with a phone like this, it has that Google Tensor chipset inside of it. So this is a brand new chipset that Google has made. So why is that important? Well, like I mentioned earlier, the future of this phone is dependent on this chipset. If this chipset is a success, and Google's going to spend so much money and so much effort at producing the best chipset ever, because I'm sure at some point they want to license this chipset out to other manufacturers. They want to take over the game, just like how Apple's doing with M1. And I feel like at some point the Google Tensor chipset is going to be replacing a lot of different chipsets and probably some other consumer electronics, if it gets big enough. I feel like the M1 chipset from Apple could essentially do the same thing. So Google's going to be spending a lot of money doing that kind of stuff, and this is the starting point. So they're going to spend a lot of money, I think, in my opinion, at producing the best chipset they can, and they're going to be supporting this type of phone and this type of chipset for several years. So they're going to perfect it, and right now it's really not that great. There's a lot of glitches like I mentioned, but I do think throughout time it's probably going to be better, and I do think probably next year it's going to be faster and better than it is currently. At least I hope so. So in terms of that covers it up there. Now, performance-wise, this is where things get kind of interesting and probably not in a good way. So it has that Google Tensor chipset, like I mentioned, and you also have the ability of having 12 gigs of RAM on this phone, which is a crazy amount of RAM to have on a phone with stock Android. But here's the big thing to keep in mind. With the Google Pixel 6 Pro, from my speed comparisons that I did, first of all, I want to say it's a smooth performing phone. It's pretty much exactly as I expected. It's not faster or slower than what I thought. It was pretty much exactly what I was expecting after owning the S21 Ultras, the Note 20 Ultras, and the OnePlus 9s. It's pretty much the same exact performance that I'm getting. But I did a speed comparison between my Pixel 6 Pro and a bunch of other Android phones, including the Pixel 5a, and I pretty much saw that I'm getting pretty much the same exact speed from the 6 Pro as the Pixel 5a. They are neck and neck, and sometimes I think the 5a was beating it, but this could be attributed to a couple of different things. Maybe because it's such a new phone and they haven't really, gotten around to updating the, fixing this and that or something like that. I don't know. I don't want to keep just making excuses for things, like this, but I do think at some point the Google Pixel 6 Pro is going to have to speed up a little bit. I think Google's going to have to push out some updates here and there. That's really the only thing I can think of. I think the performance of this phone, like I mentioned before, is smooth and it's fast, but when compared to even the Pixel 5a, I think it needs some improvement. But because this is Google's first chipset, and for it to be just as fast or almost as fast as the Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G chipset on the 5a, I think this is a good starting point. Now, Google has to go and improve this, speed, in my opinion, on this phone. I think everything else about this phone is great, but the performance is one of those things that it should be better than the 5a at least, because the 5a is still a cheaper phone, and you can pick that up for less than $500. So I'm hoping Google can make some improvements there, but the rest of the performance was great. You guys can look back at some of the other speed comparisons that I did, but overall, I'm pretty happy about this phone for sure. So in terms of that covers it up there. And this thing also has a 5,003 milliamp-hour battery, which is a massive size battery to have on a phone like this. I mean, this thing is, from my experience, it actually had really good battery life. I know some other people said it wasn't really that great, but from my experience, you can even look back on my second channel for the videos that I've done. Since I've owned this thing, I've really only charged it 2 different times, and it's been about 3 weeks. So I think that probably is saying something. I don't use it every day, but I do use it on and off, and I do these comparisons, and I make videos on my second channel for it. And even my Pixel 6 has had pretty good battery life as well. So that pretty much covers it up there. And to be honest, I think the Pixel 6 Pro is completely worth it. I think it's a great phone, and I think it has a ton of capability. I don't think it's perfect necessarily. I think it still needs a little bit of an improvement, specifically with, glitches here and there. And hopefully Google can go and actually improve the speed of this thing as well. Since they own the chipset and since they can do really anything you want to with it, I'm hoping they can go ahead and actually improve it. That's pretty much the main thing I'm thinking of. But other than that, I think the Google Pixel 6 Pro is beautiful. I like it a lot, and I'm hoping Google can go and keep improving it for sure. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.